At a younger age, I realized that the things that people tell you you're supposed to do, or the way you're supposed to act, or the way the world is, that all of that is just made up. And when I can help other people figure that out too, it's really gratifying. People are very limiting to themselves. They really do a good job of saying I can't do something, and I love proving them wrong. If they really want to work for themselves, they can do that full time. And that's cool to me because I know that that's my thing and my calling, and I'm basically serving other people that want to do that. You not only want to do it, but you want to do it around something that you've made up, some vision you've created, and you leverage our resources, you leverage our team, our creativity, and our history to be able to build whatever it is that you want. Probably the most exciting part is seeing the new entrepreneurs that just have like a vision for a product.
Some of our younger clients who maybe drew a sketch on a napkin and haven't gone through this process before have a bit more awe in their eyes.
And then they see it and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe we did it.
I immediately put on all the clothes and it was an immediate yes. I knew right away that this was the company we were supposed to be with.
They've just gotten past that place of just idea, and that's really cool.
That makes me feel like we're doing a great job, a little bit of warm and fuzzies.
We're not gonna get mad that you're too small or that you haven't started a business before. Like, we get that.
Brands will have spent years thinking about these ideas and finally have the opportunity to do that, and being able to realize that for them is really, really cool.
The initial response we got from IndieSource was that they were excited, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear because I'm excited about it.
From the first call, I knew that they were going to be the right fit. The attention they give me and the quality of the work that they do, I feel like they really have my best interests in mind. It's been amazing so far.
From that first meeting, I'll generally send them away with a bunch of homework, but they'll know step by step what they need to get done to achieve whatever goal is next.
I want to challenge people out there that are just in that curious and creative phase to bring it to the next level and find the people that want to do that with you. We are that group.
Every chance I get to tell people about where my products are being made, I am proud to say IndieSource, because they're not only made in the USA, they are made really, really well and in a very transparent way. I'm proud to be sitting here right now and happy to do it because they've been an unbelievable partner.
I think when I was younger, I didn't think that it was possible to do what I'm doing. Well, we don't need to do things the way that everybody else is doing things. We want to create something new, and we want to support all those people that are looking for that.
My name is Rebecca Blake Thompson. I'm a sustainable fashion consultant. I've been in the industry for about 12 years. I've been a buyer, I've been in sales, I've been in merchandising. I've worked for SaaS companies that service the wholesale fashion industry, and now I'm getting my master's in sustainability. So I'm particularly excited to interview Jesse Dombrowiak of IndieSource, the COO of IndieSource, to talk to him about why what IndieSource is doing is revolutionizing the apparel manufacturing model and why the old model doesn't work. When we talk about traditional apparel manufacturing and why what IndieSource is doing is different, it helps to have a little bit of context about what the traditional apparel manufacturing process is. So you want to give us kind of a breakdown of what, when you and Zach, your co-founder, when you guys were starting the business, what model you were introduced to, kind of how you were introduced to apparel manufacturing business as usual, and what opened your eyes to see that that was a challenge and a problem that needed a solution.
Sure, thank you so much. Once again, I'm Jesse. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. So in around 2012, Zach and I tried to communicate with a Peruvian manufacturer, and they had wonderful Pima cotton, and we were super excited to offer that to an American market because we thought it would help differentiate some of the blanks and t-shirt game that we were seeing. So first, we were visiting Magic and different trade shows. While walking down the exhibitors, we would notice that these companies would be printing on the same base blanks, right? And so we started questioning, hey guys, what's going on? Your artwork's different, but it's the same garment as your neighbor. And so then we started hearing some of their problems, the challenges they were facing. And so what they were saying was that working overseas had challenges, especially around the minimums, especially around completely customized fabrics. And so that was like our first introduction into what was going on in that world. So then while placing some orders with our Peruvian partner, we ran into all types of things, like especially in communication, like it almost seemed like siestas were like a country's like thing that happened every day, and like use of technology or speed and response just frustrated us. And so, and I'm not trying to like, knock the whole country, it was just that one manufacturer that we were working with, but overall it seemed that like the ability and the willingness to start to evolve and use technology was limited in a lot of manufacturers, and we found that to be true with others as well. So even just finding them, like most manufacturers didn't have a really nice website or one at all. And so just like, in today's age, a lot of people start with the internet to do that. And so it kind of created a barrier for a lot of people, right? It was almost like what we were sensing was there was this like type of, garmento attitude that was exclusive, right? And so there were people, like you were either in the in crowd or you weren't in, and if you weren't in, you didn't know people, then you didn't really have access to, making your dream product. So that was like the initial like kind of model that we were noticing, was that it was exclusive, there was high minimums, there were high barrier to entries, and especially if you came in and you had about like 80% of your design ready, they weren't set up to help you with that 20%. They don't have maybe sales reps, they don't have project managers, they just want you to say, here's the tech pack, here's everything thought out, here's the T's and I's dotted, and so if you didn't have that, they weren't willing to work with you.
Yeah, so what it sounds like with the traditional apparel manufacturing model is either that you were like all in, you were on the inside, you had access, you had big budgets, big dollars, and you could afford to go all in on production, or you were like sitting at home on your sewing machine trying to make it on Etsy by going at it yourself. So what it sounds like IndieSource decided to do was kind of come into the middle. And you guys talk about how you democratize the process of apparel manufacturing, and one of the things that I like that Zach said in the video specifically was that like we're here to serve entrepreneurs, and if like you have a vision that you've been working on for a couple years and you just need to conceptualize it, we can help you do that. So how can you speak to that person that's kind of in the middle? They don't want to sit there on their sewing machine and make their own goods and try to sell them one at a time, but they don't have that big budget and that insider access. Like, where does Indie fit into that spectrum?
Sure. So at first, when any brand comes into us, or like is first introduced to IndieSource, we start, most of them start with some of our online resources. So we have YouTube channels, we have development cheat sheets, we have these type of thought-provoking questions that we lay out before we even meet with you, just so you can start to know what type of information we're going to require, so that we can assign like a clear deliverable. And then next, we'll assign you with like a project manager, and these project managers are like experts, they have a lot of great experience, and they're there to accelerate your process through product development. So what that means is they're going to help you make informed decisions around what's maybe the best like fabric or trim, or what to do to reach your timelines, or hit a certain price point. And so that's like one of I think the key aspects is that we're an accelerator, and we help handhold people throughout the process. And the way we help democratize it is that we're super transparent about who your vendors are, what factories we're working with, just because it's a super fragmented supply chain, right? Like even just in LA, we have a beautiful ecosystem, but there's more, like no one has it all, right? There's got to be dye houses, there's got to be printers, there's got to, there's different techniques, there's the zipper guy, the button guy, and so for some entrepreneur who wants to get into the game to like start meeting and making relationships with every one of these, it can be daunting, and you may, have a pitfall, you may make the wrong decision. And so that's where our project managers are there to help hold your hand through, or help you like present some options so that you guys can select something that is really going to help you succeed, right? And so one of our main mantras is like, we are here, and what we're passionate about is to help others create successful, sustainable, and ethical clothing lines. And so how we do that is we produce almost all of our products in LA, and so we have control over the deliverables. We know who they are. We make sure they've clean water and bathrooms and things like that. And so that's important to us because we put our butt on the line for every product we make. And so we can guarantee that it's going to be there that day. We don't have to worry about, you know, some sort of viruses or environmental issues that could affect you. And so it helps just create less risk.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And you mentioned just now, you touched on transparency and the ability for a designer, an entrepreneur, somebody who's creating their line to have access to that information and to kind of be involved in the process. How does IndieSource work with a designer to both offer their guidance and expertise of the pattern makers and the project managers, but still allow the person to kind of come in with their vision and be guided through the process, maintaining the integrity of what they're trying to create, but then still getting the best advice, the best resources, the best direction on their project?
So how we would do that is that it's partially collaborative. Like, we would love for our clients, designers to come in and have an idea of what they're looking to create. But like I said, when they come in with that 80% and they need, hey, maybe I didn't think about what best, size button was for this. That's where we, some of our engineers, our production director, our sample makers do offer some sort of that input if you request it. And so it's all part of, like, let's build this product together. You aren't going to be turned away. We want to put in that energy and time where a lot of traditional manufacturers just weren't willing to have that conversation or help you in those types of regards.
Yeah, that's really cool. The transparency is neat, and I think one thing that is really different about what IndieSource is doing is giving ownership to the designer too, right? Because when we talk about why the traditional apparel manufacturing model doesn't work anymore, there's a lot of kind of holding hostage of that intellectual property that the designer might be creating. Whereas when a manufacturer agrees to partner with you and they're developing your tech packs and your patterns for you, there might not be that full transparency on how that's being created and having access to that intellectual property. So how does Indie address that and really set up their clients to go through the development process and then really be able to stand on their own as a business owner and an entrepreneur?
So first thing is intellectual property, right? So if any of you have ever experienced sending your designs overseas, it's really hard to enforce that this factory won't use your designs in other ways, right? In the United States, it's a lot easier to make sure that they're not going to be using your designs or selling your designs or something like that. And unfortunately, that is a common thing that happens overseas, which is part of the risk. And so we've heard so many burn stories of just people working with someone and sharing this proprietary knowledge. They maybe even had an NDA, but it wasn't enforced, and because they're so giant that things got mixed up. So, one thing is that we give all of our clients the ownership of their patterns, their designs, and we have, no skin in the game to want to own those things. And so we're really forthcoming with providing you with those deliverables at the end of your development. Secondly, we're super transparent again with all the vendors. So when we're ordering your materials, we're not doing it behind the scenes, behind closed doors. We actually copy you with every person. We do help manage the ordering process, so we'll submit the purchase order on your behalf, which will have the who, what, where, what style number, what article number, and so that if you ever needed that in your future, you have that database of someone that we've curated, we thought was great for you, and fit within what your vision was.
That's really cool. For anyone who's here who might not be fully versed in the traditional manufacturing process and development process, going through the development process and having to take those physical garments and turn them into a pattern. A lot of people are coming into this as entrepreneurs, and I love that you and Zach both say that you're willing to work with someone of any size. So someone could come in with just that one style, and you guys make that accessible for them to, conceptualize and digitize and actually move that product to production. That's really incredible. So I just want to say that I think that's really cool how in doing so, you've broken down that barrier where someone who does just have that one idea and only the budget and the means to get started in a small way can do that. So that's really cool. I think one thing that, that you touch on that's really important, that's on everybody's minds as well, in terms of, traditional manufacturing as usual, in very large scales, in maybe not always the most conscious and ethical way. You guys are trying to kind of, be inserted in the system so that you can kind of touch on those different levers and guide the designers and the entrepreneurs in ways that they might be able to make more conscious or ethical decisions. So what does that look like for a designer going through the development process with you to have access to those resources?
One of the super interesting points I wanted to make is that you don't necessarily need to have great drawing skills, you don't need to have great garment specking skills to come and work with us. And so one of the ways we kind of lower that barrier to entry is that we just allow our clients to bring in reference samples. And that normally is a way we can get our specs from something. So something that you love, the way it fits, and then that would be the silhouette, and then you can also create your own style lines or whatever, throw in different elements to make it your own design. And how we do that is we put it on a digitizer. So I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but it's basically a big giant computer table that our pattern makers will point and click after they lay it on the big table, where they can reverse engineer basically the fit of the garment that you've handed in, and then later add in the elements of style lines, pockets, prints, all those types of things. So that's one way we're really helpful. Secondly is we live in this beautiful town and city, and we have so much access to in-stock fabrics. And so what we try to do is we offer a lot of our clients an entry into these in-stock fabrics, so that you don't necessarily have to knit, dye. There's many countries that just don't have fabric available, so you're gonna have to knit or dye them there. And when you turn on those big machines, there's minimums, right? Most of the time, a dye lot for a regular jersey is around 1,000 to 1,200 yards. And so right there, that's what you're gonna have to invest into, and therefore probably turn into an inventory, which leads to higher warehousing costs, shipping costs. And so one of the ways we work is that we'll work with some of our local vendors who have in-stock fabrics, so we can cut and sew based off of one roll. And so that's normally around our minimum is one roll. Normally turns into 100 per color if we're talking about a t-shirt. And so that leads to less inventory risk, right? It allows you to test your garments in the game, get some feedback without having to buy 1,200 units. And so that's one strategy that I think is super unique and beautiful, because it lets people produce less, make it more small batch, local manufacturing. Again, there's so many direct and indirect effects of that, where we're paying our sewers, and they're going to be buying lunch at the food truck or something. And so just all that economic stimulation is also really attractive to me. And yeah, that answers your question.
Yeah, and a little bit more, maybe you could add some more light in terms of access to when, designers and entrepreneurs are looking for specific types of fabrics, how your team can kind of walk them through or guide them through better choices in terms of fabrics, and kind of, educate them, because a lot of the designers and entrepreneurs coming to you, to your point, and the reason you guys did this, have never done this process before. So how does your team work with them to kind of help them understand, if they are looking to build a more sustainable and ethical product, what their options might be, and what does that education look like?
Sure. I mean, I say this daily to our project managers, but it's a prescriptive model, right? It's so they're there to understand where maybe the challenges or obstacles are for the clients and help prescribe some solutions, right? So, okay, maybe this person isn't the most knowledgeable on all the woven options, but they still have, they want to consider using some organic cottons or some more natural fibers, right? So that's where they'll consult throughout that process, at least lay out some of the vendors who do have these options. These people are in stock, these ones are more knit to order, and just again curate some of these hundreds and hundreds of vendors so that there could be something more for them. And so I view it as there's some educational component as a project manager. There's a consultative approach, and then they're also just expert product developers, so they know different construction methods. They know what it means. If you make that decision, what does that imply, right? So tell the client the implications. So hey, if you want to make some custom buttons, okay, we're gonna have to add 4 weeks or something. But look at this, we have some in-stock options that are antique brass, and it may be good for now. And so there's a lot of decisions you have to make as a designer, and so you want to know, what does that mean? Like how does that affect our cost sheet? And so one thing we build throughout the entire development program is a very transparent cost sheet. So we'll be like, hey, here's our labor, here's the cut and sew price, here's what you've selected for your fabrics, here's what you put in for your trims or your printing. And so at the end of the development program, you have a very clear pathway. And then also you can start dialing in things. So, okay, hey, we did that this one time, but next collection, I want to take out the print, put in the embroidery or something like that. So that's just another way that, like, again, it's like a discussion. You have people who've done this before, and so you don't have to have every piece buttoned up, like ready to go.
Pun intended. So one thing that's really cool about indie stores versus the traditional apparel manufacturing model, a large majority portion of it is overseas, right? And that creates a lot of barriers to access, whether it's time zone or physical distance or the ability to get on a plane and fly over there. So how does, Indie Source both, maximize the opportunity to work with local designers, entrepreneurs, and brands here in LA, but then how do you also communicate with people who might not have the access to be right here in LA and still help them execute their vision, with the full Indie Source experience?
Well, with the use of technology, so one way we communicate with people all across the country is we'll do like virtual fittings. We'll send you, your swatch package of things that we've put together for your approval. We send you your samples, and so again, it's just we can use these types of video chats and things like that to communicate no matter where you are. And then I think it is important to say that like our main starting point is to do small local batch manufacturing here in LA, but at times we do have clients who are growing and they need to consider overseas pricing. And so we have one supply chain where we'll do all the development here in LA, we'll even do the printing and the cutting, but we'll bring it across the border into Mexico with a certified factory to do the sewing. And so that gives you like a growth partner, right? So hey, I am at the point where I'm making 1,000 units per style, and like how can you help me be as competitive as possible? And so we offer that one supply chain that's been working out really well, and it's still close, and our QC people and everyone can still visit there. And so that's just like another way that, like, again, we're committed to helping others be successful in this industry. And on that point, it's also we noticed a lot that people would make beautiful garments with us, stunning pieces. We were like, oh my God, that's hot, it's gonna so work. And then they would sit. And so we were like, what's going on, guys? Like, why don't you have these like sales channels open? And so we found out some people were maybe reaching out to web developers that, I don't know, didn't have the skills that they said they would. And so we started offering web development. So we do it through Shopify, make it as turnkey as possible, low entry point. We also noticed that people had problems with photography. There would be all types of photographers, wannabes, whatever, and so the product shots weren't always up to the standard that we thought they should be. So we started offering photography. We actually work right down the street at the Reef building. It's the LA Mart, and there's a beautiful photography studio there. So again, it was just like connecting a couple dots, bring in the team and make sure that it's done right. And then finally, we noticed that these brands, even if they did have a website, didn't have traffic coming into it. So what do? Well, one of the easiest ways is to put out some advertisements and start to pay per click, so you can drive some advertising. So we finally put the last element there, which is the growth marketing service, right? And so what we do is we help you set up and manage and make the best ads within most of the social platforms. And so that helped us take away some of this like risk and these people just trying to solve it on their own, failing, or not doing it at all, so that they can help promote that beautiful product that we spent all this time working on as well.
You totally read my mind, because I was going to talk about, what does full package manufacturing mean, and you really answered that. It's no secret that like the development process alone might not be, the biggest money maker for the company, but when you can work with your designers and your entrepreneurs to not only help them develop the most, saleable, viable to market product, but then work with them through that marketing and growth marketing and web website development to ensure that the growth is sustainable and is reaching the most people, then I think that's really cool, because then you guys grow together. Their production orders continue to grow, and so you both benefit, and you're both ensuring that you have a long-term partnership and that you can grow together. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's relationships.
Yeah, relationship building. I really like that. Yeah, because that is very, very different than the traditional process.
Let me add one more thing to just full package management. So, besides it being like, we really believe that good development leads to low risk production, and so even in our development process, we'll make sure that there's templates for screen prints or templates for button placement, just so that when you go into production, it's built into the pattern. The operator has a really clear thing, and so not all development is made easy. We use digital pattern making, and we, like I said, take the extra step to put in the bill of materials on our pattern cards and just make sure we have these templates so that, again, it's always going to hit the same spot. Secondly is when you're ordering materials, we'll take care of that. We'll do the calculations, we'll figure out the yield, we'll place the order. If anyone's ordered materials from vendors, I hope I don't offend anyone, but many fabric vendors are very difficult to get some answers out of. So you have to be the person to follow up, right? And so we have our materials manager follow up. Hey, you said it would be Friday, I'm calling Monday just to make sure it's there. And because it just, there's so many little moving parts, and sometimes, if your order is not as big on their roster, it may get bumped or something like that. So, we manage the ordering, we manage the procurement, and then at that point we also do a quality control check, right? Make sure that the fabric came in, matches your approved color, maybe you had a lab dip or something like that, which would be part of the dyeing process, and just make sure that it's what you ordered and it came in, or we're gonna send it back and get it. And so all these things that are just safety checkpoints are really hard for fashion entrepreneurs to do without a team, right? And so what that does is it takes you away from selling or designing. And so our whole thing is we're your technical team, we'll be there to do these types of things, and it's really clear line with what we expect you guys to do so that you can grow and focus on your brand.
I love that. I think it's really clear, how you guys are doing this model differently. I love that in making it truly full package, how you offer the development, the the production, the marketing. It's so, not only is it more seamless, it's more efficient. You're wasting less time, as the designer entrepreneur, communicating that information, handing it off from one, party to another, and getting things lost in translation. So I think that's really incredible. So it's really clear to me how you're doing a different model than traditional manufacturing. You spoke a little bit about your backstory, and since Zach's not here, I want you to speak for him as well. But I want to know a little bit more about why you guys founded the business, and what, in addition to just kind of seeing the technical things that were different, why you founded the business, and why you see this being a very viable growth channel for entrepreneurs and designers, into the future. Where is this market heading, and why does this still make so much sense to do the operation the way IndieSource does it today, to kind of future-proof yourself and prepare for the retail economy that's looming?
Well, what we noticed right away was that there was a trend happening in food, right? So within Whole Foods, right, people wanted to know more and more about the ingredients and where does this come from, what's in it, is it good for me? And so we were kind of observing that and seeing that whole growth. And at the same time, we also noticed another thing that was happening, which was the barrier to entry for brands super lowered because of e-commerce, right? People became more and more comfortable year after year buying things online, right? And so now brands don't have to go to Macy's to sell their product, right? And so it's just important to say that all of these people now wanted to start a clothing brand, and they actually could because they can sell online. Companies like Nasty Gal and things like that don't need to go through Macy's to get their product out there. So again, these factories weren't built to handle this type of influx of newbies and people who didn't have all the tech packs and specs, and so that was the underserved market we were tackling. And so with those two things, it's just part of what we are addressing. And so what we're seeing in the future is that people are more and more interested in what are the ingredients in their clothing, right? What kind of dyes, what are you doing with your dyes after you dye my clothes? Microplastics and polyester, like people are curious more now than ever, and there's so much access to information where people want to see big change. And so we were starting to work with some factories. They just weren't willing to join us on this mission to change things. And I'm just super sickened by the way people are treated overseas. I'm super sickened by the way like we handle our fabric manufacturing. And so there needs to be some change. And again, this is one step forward. I'm not completely satisfied with what we have today, but I'm hungry and I'm trying to build our village and our people who do want to join us. And it starts by changing one brand, right? One brand now starts selling organic cottons or things that we know we had control. And that's one piece of product that's not going to be that other way, right? So little by little, and again, like we welcome everyone's ideas to help join us in this type of movement, because that's what we're passionate about. It makes us get out of bed in the morning.
Since we have a very diverse audience here, and we've been speaking to how designers and entrepreneurs can work with you, I also think it's important to touch base on the diverse portfolio of clients that you have, because it's not just about starting a clothing line. You work with very established brands as well. So could you maybe speak to some of the special projects and the types of clients you have and the portfolio of the work you do? I'm sure the designer and the entrepreneurs are like the fun, exciting, like kind of get your hands dirty, like help people learn things for the first time. But you guys are super established and super high profile in terms of the work you do. So maybe you speak to that, so anyone that's in the audience that fits that profile understands how they could work with Indie Source.
Sure. So, like one example is that we Frame Denim. So Frame Denim does some swimwear with us, right? So that's one of our larger brands. We did some sweatpants for Good American, which is Khloe Kardashian's brand. We work with a few different marketing companies. So I don't know if you guys know Dollar Shave Club, but they created a product called the Roblancho with us, which is a robe poncho blanket. I think you saw Emily dancing in a pizza parka. It's something we made with Pizza Hut as part of their marketing campaign. The guy with the sweatpant overall shirt, his brand's called Swoveralls, and he's an example of like a one product client who came in, and it's sweatpants and overalls, and he was on Shark Tank, and that's his one niche is to sell that. And so it really isn't just startup people. We do help some of the local LA designers and brands, and again, some of them are happy to offer made in the USA products, which is where we fit in. And also they just love the fact that their production director, who's managing hundreds of SKUs all across the world, blah, 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 can now rely on our team to take over some of the ones domestically, which has its own supply chain needs. And so that's why it works. Instead of hiring a full-time production director, X amount of dollar salary, you could pay us just for that deliverable and that full package management, and we put our butt on the line for the product. So it works in terms of a financial sense. It works in terms of giving their team a break on some of these things, and then there's the ethical and sustainable portions.
Cool, I think that's it. I want to offer up just a couple of questions. We're at time. Is there any questions from the audience for Jesse? Yes?
So what types of garments have you manufactured, just kind of?
Sure, I mean, so generally it's knits and wovens, but we also do some accessories, like Jen Stark's a local artist, and we sublimate her art on bags. We've done a lot of different beanies, so jackets, pants, board shorts. We did board shorts for Sol Angeles, which is a really popular brand. We're working with Kith right now too on some of their streetwear, kind of patchwork stuff. So French terries, silks, all types of athletic. We do a lot of athletic leggings, and we actually even have recycled polyesters and Blue Sign certified materials. So it is a lot, and it's fully custom. You get to choose your colors, you get to choose the construction and build it from the ground up, and then it's all types of things that we can use our machinery for. So we have, whatever we can do cutting and sewing of is stuff that we'll take on. Either whether it's a headband that's cut and sew, but we have flat lock, overlock, cover stitch, single needle machines, and so those are the ones we want to use. And you can make a ton of products with that, and so we're not restrictive and we're only knit manufacturer because we have all of that.
Anybody else? Yes?
What is your cost per feet?
Sure. So, I mean, each cost is dependent on the complexity of the garment and what kind of services you want. So, we'd be happy to what we do is we have a meeting with you. We kind of go over your reference samples, and we kind of figure out what sourcing you need, and then we give you a quote on the spot. So, If anyone, I have some business cards over there, and we have some of our like flyers too. So set a meeting with us, because we can't just like say a number right now.
Saying,
Yeah.
are you like per piece or?
So for development, we'll give you like a number to develop a collection, and then for production, we give you a per piece number, and then we'll have that like cost sheet built out with you guys. So normally it's like you'll start with us with development, we'll give you a quote, and then that's for all of our like labor and time, and like sourcing and making patterns and cutting and sewing samples and doing the fitting. And we always include 2 rounds. So we'll make the first prototype, we'll do a fitting, we'll do revisions, and then we'll make the second round. I mean, like depending on the collection and the order, like, you know, sometimes it's around like, you know, $1,000 to $7,000, depending on how many styles you have for development. And then production, most people spend around $10,000 to $20,000 on average for production, right? So you can be in the game less than $30,000 and have, you know, like a significant amount. And again, these are arbitrary numbers, but those are the averages. There are less, there are more. But that at least gives you a guideline, because, and I always like to say it's like cheaper than starting a food truck. You know, like you don't have to like have a stove or something like that. Yeah, and so, you know, again, like that is a way that people can like get into the game and get that market feedback. You know, like it's important.
But if anybody has more questions, I know Jesse mentioned his cards are over there on the counter. There's also flyers for IndieSource. You can hop on their website. There's tons of videos and tutorials, so you can already get a behind the scenes of what's going on and what their process looks like. And then you can easily reach out to them to learn more. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.